just to get around. Running and running and running all over town, yeah. Turn it all around, let you down. Gonna turn it all around.
Hey everyone, we're going to talk about EQing vocals today. I recorded a song specifically for this with lots of little parts in it, so we can see the exact steps that I go through when I mix my own stuff and when I EQ my own vocals to fit with my tracks. First of all, let's start at the very beginning, because EQ really terrifies a lot of people, and I think that's because the frequencies of sound, you know, they don't mean a lot to a lot of people. They don't get an image of what each of these frequencies does. So the trick here is for me to, as we talk about this more and more, and we talk about it a lot in the Easy Home Recording Blueprint, it starts to feel more natural. It's a bit like a language, and then once you pick up on it, you're away to the races. So, you know, we're going to talk about the frequencies and how they affect a lead vocal specifically for this section. But before we even go there, sometimes when something's a little terrifying, there's a really cool mental trick that you can do, and that is, when you're going to start something brand new like that you're going to do that you're a little nervous about, try to compare it to something that you already do in real life. I do that all the time. There's some other thing that I do without thinking, and there's bound to be similarities, and the logic tends to be connected in almost everything we do. That's just the way it is. You know, there's every task we do, whether it's, you know, rocket science or digging a hole, there's some sort of commonality in pretty much everything we do. So for this, I'm going to get you to imagine your recording project, before you even start, as a big empty room. Okay, so just, that's your recording project. It's just an idea right now. It's a big empty space. Now, if you were going to furnish a room, you would go through the steps of measuring the room, deciding the elements that you want in the room, and what is going to be the focus of the room. And you would do that without thinking. Well, your EQ and your recording project is very much like that. Before you hit that record button, you know, you've got to picture what that room is going to sound like when it's done. What that project's going to be like. So it defeats the project if you don't have like a really clear vision of your song and your recording. But amazingly, this is not the first thing we think of doing. The first thing we think of doing is rushing in and hitting the record button. Okay, so let's do that. Let's create at least that good habit, because it really pays a lot of dividends down the road. Okay, so for this song that I'm doing, I wanted a nice warm vocal that really leads the way. And then I start to decide, well, what artist could I compare what I'm going to do to? Because I'd like to listen to their EQ and their mix, because that's the ballpark that I want for this song. So I started thinking, and within a couple of seconds I realized, well, I'd like this voice to sit nice and intimate and close to the listener, like somebody like a Jason Mraz, or even some of the sort of early stuff by Bob Marley. Just that thing where you find yourself hanging on the words of the song, and it's a very warm, personal sound to it. Okay, so the next step would be to listen to those songs that I've decided to use as my sort of model, my EQ template for my own thing. And it's important to listen and really listen, not listen and just have fun listening the way you are when you've got your fan hat on. This is more of your producer hat that you should be wearing. And so you're going to be listening to the relationship of that vocal to the bass and to the backbeat, to the drum or the guitar. And you're going to listen to those artists' work and you're going to go, oh, okay, so that vocal is sort of close. It's close to the listener, and the guitar is here with a bit of reverb, and the guitar is quite trebly, say. Okay, but the bass is very low and woofy sounding. Okay, I get it. So that's why that track has that warm, sort of summertime sort of sound. Okay, and these are the kind of mental notes that you would make as you were listening to other people's artists, other people's songs, to use as a model for your own song. Okay, so all right, I listened to a few of those things, and now I feel comfortable as I enter my recording session, and most importantly, I now don't have 5 million things that I could try, because I've narrowed the field. I know what I want to hear, and sure, there's going to be the odd little surprise here and there, but and I might add something I wasn't thinking of, but pretty much I know it's going to be, you know, just you know, a nice warm little bass and drum pattern, you know, with a bit of a keyboard pad, and in this particular song, almost like an old Motown trebly sounding guitar. And that's pretty much it. And then the main thing is I want that vocal to be nice and warm and personal out front for this song. So, you know, I'm entering this having limited my choices, and now I'm like totally laser focused on what I'm going to do before I even hit the record button. Let's get to the recording. Main thing is we get a nice sounding vocal straight onto track. Now, does the mic matter? Yes, that's the first thing. Before we even start worrying about EQ and all that, yeah, the mic matters, because the more suited to your voice that your mic is, your EQ adjustments are going to be way less. It's going to be so much easier. If you've got a mic that puts down just a really nice representation of your voice and isn't full of its own little baggage. Some mics have these bizarre sort of frequency peaks that they literally add to your vocal, and then you've got to try to chop them down with your EQ and try to sort of make something out of something that your mic has added to your voice. The good news is you don't have to spend $2,000 or $3,000 for a mic, especially nowadays. There's really, really good mics, and I think it's because of the explosion of home recording that so many choices are available. I've got on this page just a link, you know, where you can have a look at the mic that I use, and I'm just really happy with it. But I totally admit that there's lots of other mics that are really good too, that can cost, you know, like $100 or $200, not $2,000, $3,000. So, you know, that's awesome. It wasn't always like that. Now, in my opinion, it's important to get that vocal down early. So for this song, I literally just put like a click track so that I stayed in the correct tempo with the track. And that was just a temporary track, but really all I sang to was the keyboard part that you'll hear in the song. And the reason I did that is I want that vocal down early, because every other track that I begin to add, I want that vocal there staking its claim on this song. I don't want to lay a lot of instruments and then have them step all over my vocal later. So now when I add the other instruments, I can be sure to make sure they're supportive of this vocal. And now everything I add can be in support of that vocal, rhythmically, you know, Also, even frequency-wise, I can make sure that I'm not crowding that vocal with instruments that are just, you know, in the vocal's face. Okay, so getting down the vocal early, I recommend that a lot. Actually, what I'll do is I'll edit this video so that you can listen to what I've got to start. So it's a vocal and a keyboard, that's it.
Open your eyes, yeah, 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 and I say, here comes the sun, here comes the sun. You know that I've been around.
Right now it sounds pretty good because there's not much that the vocal is having to compete with. The keyboard is very supportive of the vocal, so I could, you know, I could stop now and really do very little EQ to that vocal. But I know that when I add my bass and my drums, I will have to do some adjusting. Why? Because a vocal is amazing, because the human vocal is an amazing instrument because it's got a huge EQ spread. It's a big instrument, right? Where, you know, people are a big instrument. Got this big chest, and we create a lot of resonances through a very broad section of the EQ, the frequency field. So in my case, this vocal, when I looked at it, has a spread from, I don't know, about 80 hertz, which is down in the bass frequencies, you know, right in the thick of the bass guitar area, all the way up to 16,000 hertz, 16K is what you call that. And that's up like with the hi-hat and the cymbals. That's mainly, you know, the vocal is creating that frequency mainly with the S's that one says and all that, but there's also a bit of coating of air on a vocal that that shows up on the frequency spectrum as well. Okay, so we've got sort of the air cover on the vocal, and then the fat of the vocal coming through from way up high. We're starting at 16K. As we move down, we get to the fat of the signal of the vocal, the main sort of meat and potatoes of the vocal coming down from like 5K down through the mid-range, down through the sort of resonance of the voice, you know, down through 1K, 1000 hertz, through the mid-range, like 800 hertz, 500 hertz. That's sort of where that sort of low mid-range resonance of the voice is. And then all the way to the bottom supporting frequencies, the weight down in the bass frequencies. So it's a big instrument. But the thing is, the voice doesn't have to occupy that whole frequency spread, you know, and especially down in the bass frequencies. That's baggage that we don't need and really should be better occupied by the by certain instruments that are going to stake out that territory far more effectively. A voice with too much bass on it is just really amateurish, and it's boomy, and you know, it's not good sounding. But now here's like the really cool thing is, once you choose the appropriate instrument to stake out the territory, the frequency territory that it should be dominating, the things around it get this credit for those frequencies, because a listener can't tell exactly what is expressing a certain frequency, or is just happy to hear a balanced sound coming from the song, and they may not know why something sounds good, but they appreciate and they know what they like and when all the pieces are in the right place. So, okay, what did we do specifically to the vocal on this song to make sure it sat in the right place? okay, well, I've added the bass and the drums and the guitars, and as I mentioned before, I very soon found out that the voice, because of its broad EQ spread, you know, was getting tangled up with the bass and the kick drum and everything, and it was getting rumbly at the bottom. So, as I said, the lead vocal doesn't need to be down there anyway in the low bass area. So, as you can see in the image of the graphic EQ, step one was I rolled down the very, very low bass frequencies, the ones that are doing nothing for the vocal. So that got the rumble out of the vocal track. And believe it or not, even though you don't hear much difference at that point because some of those frequencies are beyond our hearing as humans, believe it or not, there is information down there, and by rolling those down, we're actually buying ourselves a little more headroom, a little more space for our tracks. Okay, so then moving on, we get to the sort of meat and potatoes of the bass frequency, where the bass, the heart of the bass and the kick drum are. And so, as you can see in the image, one of the stronger bass frequencies that you can actually feel is around 80 hertz, 80 and 100 hertz, 120 hertz. Those move a lot of air. Those are heavy frequencies, and the voice is set up shop there heavily, and it really shouldn't, because it's just making the bass plus the vocal make this big boomy sound there. So rolled down 80 hertz in this particular case on this particular vocal. So I've rolled that down to a certain extent. That's going to be more or less depending on the song, but it's always going to need attention. And so it's a very gradual slope through the 100s hertz and 80. So I think you can see on the diagram they sort of just peter down to sort of remove the bottom, the heavy bottom off the vocal. As soon as I did do that, the bass guitar suddenly springs to life and is clearer. So it's exciting when you do the right adjustments, because other things start falling into place. It's like a domino effect. You change the correct little thing and something else in the mix jumps forward. You can, oh, this is important, you can actually often do much of your mixing just with your EQ adjustments. It's not always a volume issue, it's more of a perception issue, you know, what you're perceiving to be there and not there. So sometimes when something needs to come up in the mix, it's actually not a volume thing, and a lot of people are chasing volume all the time. You know, why can't I hear the bass? Turn it up, turn it up. But they're just, that's a never-ending rabbit hole to go down. It'll end up just being a mess if you're always just chasing volume levels. Anyway, by rolling off those bass frequencies off the voice, the bass guitar becomes more clear and distinct, and it seems like I've turned it up, okay, but I didn't. So that's cool, and that's true in all the frequencies when you start making the correct adjustments. Then we move into the boxy frequencies, 500 hertz, 6, 7, and 800 hertz. There's a certain boxy sound in there, which is a necessary color for sounds to have included in them. But if something is overall sounding boxy, those are the frequencies that you start playing with. This particular vocal, probably just a reflection of this room where I record. You know, could have been how close I was to the mic or how far away. Anyway, this particular vocal had a little boxy sound to it. So anyway, I did some adjusting there, not much. A lot of these adjustments are not huge. So just because you hear a boxy sound to something, you know, doesn't mean you just whip out all of 500 hertz or 600 hertz. It just means playing in the correct area, messing around in the right area. Okay, so those, I dealt with those, and that was immediate. That just took off a little, the edge off that boxy stuff. And then we're up in the mid-ranges, and those are, I think you can see in the image, those are minor adjustments as well. And for this particular vocal, I was reacting to things like a bit of harshness in and around the 2 kilohertz, 2000 hertz area. So there's a little adjustment there. You'll notice that 5 kilohertz comes down a little further. That was because I hit the S's a little hard when I sang this, which is a thing that I do. I try not to hit my S's so hard, but I do it. Anyway, so I rolled down the 5 because that's right in the heart of where the S sound lives. And then there's just really very small adjustments all the way back up, and then quite a large adjustment up at 20 kilohertz, because I mentioned that's up in the subsonic territory where we don't hear well anyway. In fact, I probably could have rolled down more off that 20 kilohertz. In fact, I often end up doing that, but it's sounding okay to me now, and that's the most important thing. Just because I always roll down a lot of 20 hertz or filter it right out, 20 kilohertz, sometimes I just actually filter that right out with a pass filter that won't even let those frequencies through. In this case, we're just using a simple graphic EQ. So mostly I bring those down more, but that just because I do it every other time, it shouldn't really dictate this project. You always go by what is sounding good on the day you mix, and especially the day after and the day after that. A mix isn't probably not something you should complete and then send out. You really, 99% of the time, when you come back to it with fresh ears the next day or the day after that even, you're gonna go, oh my goodness, I've got to do some more adjusting because it sounds entirely different today to me. And that's just because your ears are fresher and you're a little more objective on the second and third day. But anyway, we'll see how it sounds. If it's a little bright later, I can play with the very high end again. Okay, so the sound of the vocal, I'm really happy with it. We've gotten that warm sound that I want. It's clear. I think for this particular song, the lyrics are easy to hear. They're sitting sort of forward and almost hovering above the band telling that story, so that was my goal. All the instruments are laid. The only mixing adjustments now are going to be the small volume, the sort of traditional volume type mixing. Certain words in my performance might be a little loud or even a little quiet, so I'll make little automated mix adjustments, and we talk about that in the Easy Home Recording Blueprint a lot. And if you're using pretty much any recording software that you've got is going to have some kind of little automated mixing ability. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to listen to or I'll put a link to the full track and you can hear that. There's a lot of background vocals in this. Now, they're not, once our lead vocal is established, those background vocals don't have to be, or shouldn't be even, EQ'd the exact same way as the lead vocal. Because once again, that lead vocal is establishing a lot of frequency territory. It's leading the way and giving the listener and satisfying the listener that those vocal EQs are dealt with. So background vocals, you can give the illusion of tucking them behind the vocal, not just with volume and maybe a little reverb or whatever, but it's not just that. It's you can actually make them a little duller than the lead vocal, a little thinner, or in some cases you can make them a little brighter than the lead vocal and a little harsher, and then tuck them back and then pan them off to the sides, left, right. And maybe if you listen to them soloed all by themselves, they sound, you know, this thin, and you're going, that's not a nice sound. But that's not the point. You bring in the rest of the tracks and they're sitting perfect, and they're only using up like this much frequency space of your headroom, and they're very clear because they're not all part of the lead vocal getting all mushed up in the heart of the lead vocal. So that's how you can have like 15 background vocals, each doing little things, and still hear them, still hear each of those parts. That's because they're EQ'd strategically, and you're able to place them with your EQ. Sometimes a background vocal can be very dull. It can be, you know, almost like this, or talking like this, because you're tucking it behind and it's getting all kinds of credit for brightness and clarity from other things, the lead vocal, other things. So it doesn't need to be real crisp or real bassy or whatever.
All over town, yeah. Turn it all around, let you down. Gonna turn it all around, let you down. You know that I've been around, been going up.
Okay, so that's a real cool trick that a lot of people don't know about, or at least they don't. It makes sense to them, but they weren't aware that that's, you know, how people are mixing these complex background vocals. Okay, so that's about it for today. Of course, you know, on major projects and everything, there's a lot of activity with complex compression settings and to create and isolate and enhance vocals. But unless you're really good with a basic graphic EQ like what we're talking about, there's no real gain in leaping forward into playing with detailed compression settings, because you know, you'll end up with something less than satisfactory, whereas you can make it sound pretty good with good, skillful use of your graphic EQ and good, skillful mixing. And you know, that's what my easy home recording blueprint is all about. And so I invite you to come and check out the Easy Home Recording Blueprint. Drop me a line if you have any questions about it, and check me on Facebook. There's a great community there that's growing every day, and there's a lot of great sounding music coming out of the Recording Blueprint community, and some really cool success stories, which you'll see some of those on the Facebook page. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it up because my legs are asleep. I don't even know if I'll be able to stand up here. And so all the best, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.
Here comes the sun. You know that